Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Rapp podcast. Well, what's new this week, Mike?
Hey, I am just excited to announce our guest today. Wasn't that a great conversation we had earlier in the week?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. We have a titillating guest for you today. One we've been trying to get on this podcast for a long time, but he's been busy.
Years.
He's a busy man, and you know what? It didn't disappoint. It was a great interview. So much so, we're going to have him on a couple more times just to complete this interview.
There can easily be a part 2, a 3, 4, 5, who knows, because, man, the way we were going, especially once we got into the Rapp stuff, these moments we liked, the arcs in the series that we liked, the characters, we could have went for hours just talking about Rapp.
Yeah, and so, as you guys know from the intro, this is being dropped on the Rapp pod because we are discussing Rapp. But before we get into today's interview, I just want to me and Mike wanted to give you a little bit of update on all we're doing with No Limits. So not only do we have this pod, we just covered Oath of Loyalty, culminating with an awesome interview with Kyle Mills. Great book. Go get that. If you haven't read that, I don't know what rock you've been under for the past month. It's almost Halloween. It damn near, when this comes out, it will be Halloween. So you should have read that book. Anyways, on season 2, we are going strong with probably, should I say our favorite book? Maybe hot take? I don't know. Takedown this month. We put up part 1, where part 2 will be coming out to you soon. What an awesome book, Mike. I love Takedown.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting back to the Scott Harvath pod. We're trying to do one Brad Thor book a month, and the last few, maybe we were in a little bit of a rut, but Takedown, let me tell you, this one comes out swinging. When we record that second part, this is going to be up there with Lions of Lucerne. We'll see if it can eclipse it. I'm not sure, but yeah, we are full steam ahead with Scott Harvath and the Brad Thor books over on season 2 of No Limits.
If that wasn't enough for you, we have a third pod. Haven't heard of it? No Limits, the Thriller podcast, where we talk about everything that's not Scott Harvath or Rapp, Kyle Mills, whatever. And let me just tell you what we've covered so far on that feed. All of the Chris Howdy books. A lot of the Jack Carr books. Almost
Yes.
All of the Jack Carr books. I think we have 2 left, right? We also did The Gray Man, Mark Greaney, and the movie. And we might even dabble in a little bit of Gabriel Allende.
Yes, Daniel Silva.
So
Also, the True Believer. If we get season 2 of the Terminal List announced, we'll be live on that podcast, definitely digging into all the gossip around that show. And we just covered True Believer, the book.
yeah, we covered True Believer. We covered all of the Terminal List. Mike did an awesome job bringing on multiple guests, break that down. We had an interview with Jack.
Oh, and next week,
Yes.
Andrews and Wilson.
Tell him.
Oh, dude, yeah. Perhaps 2 of my favorite authors this is crazy, 2 authors writing a series together. The Tier 1 series is just super badass. And they've also released their second book in the Sons of Valor series. Man, Chunk, he's such an operator. Absolutely loving that book. And then the Shepherd series, which is so unique. Chris, you haven't gotten into the Shepherd series yet, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay, dude. It is one of my favorites. Their debut book, Dark Intercept, in that series, it's up there, man. Like, it's up there with Terminal List as a debut and Term Limits as a debut. It's so unique. It's so different. I can't even, this idea of spiritual warfare, and it's insane to think of that in a military-style thriller, but they pull it off. So next week, we're going to have them on talking about their newest release, Dark Fall, the 3rd book in the Shepherd series. You do not want to miss Andrews and Wilson.
And I guess we could just say it right here. If you like what you're hearing, for less than the price of a novel a month, you can help support No Limits. We should say thank you to our patrons. In our first year, we were able to do an amazing $500 donation to the Prostate Cancer Foundation in Vince's memory, which was amazing. And we continue going with Operation Paperback. Tell them all about Operation Paperback, Mike.
Chris, I'm having a blast partnering with Operation Paperback. It felt real great making the donation to the Prostate Cancer Foundation, and I feel like the work we're doing with Operation Paperback is just as meaningful, if not more. They're an organization, a nonprofit, that enlists volunteers to send care packages of books and magazines and literature to active duty troops, as well as veterans and veterans' homes and hospitals. So far, just this month, we've sent 30 books in 2 care packages to veterans' hospitals, and that puts our 2-year total as a Thriller podcast community over 1,200 books sent in over 50 different care packages, and a few of those were to active duty bases around the world. So hopefully we're making a big impact getting books out there. And I will say, Chris, a majority of those books, I can honestly say, have been Vince Flynn novels. I've prioritized making sure a lot of Vince Flynn novels get into those care packages. So
that's awesome. Share the wealth.
You can join us and become a patron and help us continue to send out these monthly care packages and collect Thriller books. Just visit thrillerpod.com, click the orange Support Us on Patreon button. You will get bookmarks, stickers, a coupon code in our gear store so you can get your hoodie, t-shirt, Mitrap Pod gear. Every penny will help support the podcast, and the profits will go towards continuing to send out care packages to our troops and our veterans. I guess on that note, we should shout out our newest patron.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, Rod has joined us since we recorded, and we missed a few in there because we had them pre-recorded, but welcome, Rod G. You were not only a guest many, many episodes ago talking about Kyle Mills, you are his gun guru and his gun advisor, but now you are a patron of the podcast. You're part of the reason we can keep this podcast coming at you weekly.
Welcome, Rod. Thank you very much for your support. So, yeah, we're just cranking out content for you. You know, what better than to give you more content than to give you a giveaway? What do you think? Should we give him a giveaway for this special interview? We haven't even told him who it's going to be, but we have a special giveaway.
Yeah, so this interview today, Chris, I think you and I both said when we started this podcast, smack in the middle of the pandemic, 2020 at its worst, we said 2 things would be great if they can happen. 1, we get Kyle Mills on the pod. 2, we get Ryan Steck, the Rappologist, on the pod. And today we make that dream a reality. And so to celebrate, we want you guys, our listeners, involved. We wouldn't be here without you. So we are giving away 2 copies of Fields of Fire. We're going to see if we can bother Ryan enough to get him to autograph these copies. We'll pay for the shipping, Ryan, so we got you covered. So possibly 2 autographed copies of Fields of Fire, and there are 4 ways to enter. First, you have to be subscribed to all 3 of our podcast feeds. And then for each one of these entries on our social media, you will get an entry into the giveaway. So 4 chances to win. First, by leaving a review in the Apple Podcast app. We hope it's 5 stars, but if you write up a little comment, put your screen name or username in there, how we can contact you. That's 1 entry. If you retweet our official tweet promoting this episode, once we publish this episode, go ahead, retweet and share that. Same on Instagram if you share our story, the official story where we're publishing this episode. And if you join on Facebook, the No Limits group, and share our post where we'll be making our official post of this episode. So 4 ways, 4 social media platforms. If you help share the pod, we will put your name into the pot to win a copy of Fields of Fire. And dude, speaking of debut book, Ryan Steck comes on strong with his first, Matty Red. I think Matty Red's going to be a household name in the Thrillerverse.
Yeah, and it's funny, we barely got a chance to, I guess because we wanted to talk to him for a long time, and we finally got him on, and this culminating with, this is episode 112 of our Mitrap pod, so that many hours of content that we wanted to discuss with him. So at the very end, obviously, we had to talk about his book. I think sprinkled throughout, he mentions it, so definitely go out there, get your copy of Fields of Fire. He's already working on the second one. Yeah, a really good debut book, and hopefully we have a chance to talk about this more, either definitely between the 2 of us, but hopefully we can bring Ryan back on to talk a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. And the way he's talking about Lethal Range, the second book, the sequel, man, I'm jazzed about that too. So you'll hear that in the interview. Join us in talking with Ryan Steck, the Rappologist. Today, we are very excited to welcome to No Limits, the Mitch Rapp podcast, the world's #1 Mitch Rapp fan, and now an accomplished author, the real book spy himself, the Rappologist. Welcome, Ryan Steck.
Thank you, man. That's a great intro.
Got a lot of accomplishments on your resume to tout tonight.
You sounded so genuine and excited. I'm gonna make my wife listen to that so she treats me like I'm more important after this.
It's probably the only time we could say we're having a guest on this pod that we know is more of a Mitch Rapp fan than the two of us. Like, hands down, you are the #1 Mitch Rapp fan. So honored to have you on the pod.
I'm honored to come on, guys. Thank you for having me. I wanted to come on for a long time. I love what you guys are doing, and it's nice to be with like-minded Mitch Rapp fans.
Yes.
Right, and we actually want to pick up there. Let's go to the early days.
Yeah.
You are the Rappologist. The first time we were introduced to your work was stumbling upon Mitch Rapp fan. And I think Chris and I while we had this idea for the podcast, we saw your work. We're like, wow, there's a community out there of people who just want more rap any way they can get it. And you brought to people a blog and book reviews and interviews. Tell us about the early days of becoming the Rappologist.
Man, it's so crazy for me to look back on now because it was never something I intended to turn into what it is now. I never would have thought back then it was the first steps into a new career for me. Back then I was a failed sports journalist, coming out of that 2012-ish. Okay. I was a Detroit Lions beat reporter for 1 year, which was painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've literally, by the way, sucked from then till now. So I didn't miss much leaving that career behind. Okay,
nothing changed.
No, nothing has changed. But I really started to struggle with some of my write-ups and felt like it was a lot harder than it should be. I knew what I wanted to say, but getting it out was tough. And I remember talking to my doctor as an adult, and they sent me to do some testing and stuff. And my doctor was like, "Hey, you're dyslexic," and I didn't know that. Made sense when they explained to me what it was. And I remember my doctor was like, if you want to beat this, just go read. Well, I didn't read a lot at the time. So one of the first things I did was I went home and I Googled dyslexic authors because I felt like if there's an author out there who's dyslexic and they beat this, that's where I want to go see their work. I want to see if they're actually good at what they do. And literally the first person that popped up was Vince Flynn. So I actually didn't jump into the series just yet. As wild as this is, it was a few days, maybe a week or 10 days or so later that Vince died. And so I remember on the news, I saw this and I was like, wow, that's the guy that's the author I had just been reading about that beat dyslexia. And I had the news on and they were like, he's known for his famous Mitch Rapp series and for consulting on the hit show 24 season 5. And I was like, that's my favorite season of that show. I love that show. So I started American Assassin the night that the night Vince Flynn passed away. Wow. Literally that night. I jumped in, and at the time, my oldest son was going through a lot of medical issues. And we literally had to have a revolving 24-hour, someone had to have eyes on taking care of him. And so I always got the night shift, and I would read to stay awake. And I read American Assassin that first night. And was so blown away. I was like, this guy is a badass. I love this. I'm so in. And I bought the whole series the next day. And within a month, maybe, I read every single book. Except for, so this is something I've never told anyone. This is truly an exclusive. I didn't read Term Limits. I skipped Term Limits because I knew Mitch wasn't in it. And so I've never admitted this publicly, but I will be honest with you. The night that I finally read Term Limits was the night that Kyle Mills was announced to be taking over the series, and I knew there'd be more books because I just wanted one more book that, in my life, if I knew there's still one more I didn't read, it's not a Mitch Rapp book, but I knew the premise. And so in my mind, it was like, there's always this one that I could turn to, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's still, because there's nothing like that first time through these books. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every time, like, you're like, Mitch does something badass, and then you're like, oh, he's so great. And then you meet this bad guy, you're like, I hate you. I can't wait till Mitch kills you. I don't know how that's going to happen or when, but it's going to be awesome. And you know it's coming, and there's just nothing like it, man. So I waited and waited and waited, and I couldn't bring myself to read it because the journey was really done. I've never told this publicly. So the night Kyle was announced, I freaked out and went and actually made coffee and sat and read Term Limits cover to cover. And so at the time this was all going on, we had 4 kids, and so Chris knows that's a struggle. I had 4 kids, and my wife was like, yeah, this is great. I'm glad you're a fan of this, but like, you need to be productive, and like, you're a sports writer. And I didn't feel like one anymore. I had stepped away. But I was practicing to get back to it. So when I was reading the books, I was taking notes as like a way to practice watching an NFL game, jotting down the stats and what's happening, you know, across the game. The course of the game, you know, that the way, because a lot of people don't know this. You're writing your game story while the game's on. Like while you're watching it, you're writing that game story. So this truly was like second nature for me to just be taking all these crazy notes and writing out all this stuff. And when I was done with the series, I had like, I'm not lying, like stacks of legal pads of notes just everywhere. I look like a crazy person. And I remember like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this, but I've got it, you know? And my wife was the one who was like, why don't you make like a website and put all this stuff out there? And I was like, people are going to think I'm nuts, you know, but let's do it. And so for me, it was, I never expected anyone to find it. I didn't think anyone would come across it. Truly, I didn't. And the madman, David Brown, Atrium Mystery Bus himself, is the one who really kind of discovered it and reached out to me. And at the same time, you know, Kyle, you guys have had him on, you know him, like he is so different than Vince when it comes to like how he goes about writing a book. He likes all these notes and he wants everything he can have in 30,000 word outlines. And so when he was preparing for The Survivor, you know, the pretty famous backstory was he had said, send me everything that Vince had, because The Survivor was announced and the first chapter was on Vince's website. It was 3 pages. So they said, okay. And they literally sent him the 3 pages that were on the website. And that was it. And I know that at the time he kind of was like, oh my gosh, you know, and as the story goes, it was sort of like David Brown was like, we know a guy. And so, so Kyle and I met and we talked a lot. And early on, I was like stoked because I was hearing it from him, how committed he was. Because that was the fear, right? Like on one hand, you're very excited. Like Mitch Rapp is going to live on. On the other hand, you're like, what if it sucks? You know, and it's almost like for me, it was like a no lose situation. It was like when George Lucas made more Star Wars movies. It was like, if this is awesome, this is going to be awesome. But if it sucks, you'll be like, this didn't really count. You know?
Yeah, sure.
So I went into it really excited. Like either way, this is going to be awesome. And was so blown away by what Kyle was doing. And at the time, you know, I think the hardest thing for me was like that first year, no one knew that Kyle wrote every page but the first 3 pages. And so everyone was like, oh gosh, it's really hard to tell where Vince left off, but you know, he did a good job and so glad Kyle could finish this book. And I thought that's such an ass backwards way to build it. Like, I get why, but Kyle wrote that book. You know, that was on Kyle. So everyone that loved it and felt like Vince's last work was so great, that really is Kyle Mills. And knowing that for me, I was like, we're good to go, guys. Like, we're good. Like, Kyle's in the driver's seat. He gets it. My first conversations with him were like, what do you think special about Mitch Rapp? And the way he would answer that, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, this guy gets it. Like, this is the Mitch Rapp that I love. And I was really pumped. And, you know, like from there, it's so crazy. I did the Vince Flynn Encyclopedia, and David Brown nicknamed me the Rappologist. That's still probably, of all my names, that's probably my favorite.
Oh, that was from David. I don't think I knew that.
David Brown nicknamed me that.
Okay.
From there, you know, what I really loved was meeting other people that love Mitch Rapp. But the thing that like drove me nuts was there was readers that didn't love Mitch the way I did. You know, they'd be like, yeah, he's okay. I'm like, no, you're wrong. First of all, he's great. You're wrong. He is the best character ever created. Who do you like?
He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT.
He's the best, man. Come on. He's like the Tom Brady of thriller protagonists. Let's just be honest, okay? And so I never like understood how he's not your favorite character, okay? I literally did a book signing for my first book, Fields of Fire, and someone was like, who's your favorite character, ever created? And someone was like, it's going to be Matty Red. And I was like, no, it's not. So I was like, so his name's Mitch Rapp. He's really important to me. I found him at a time in my life. Again, I had a kid, very serious medical issues, and kind of clung to Mitch, as an outlet, as weird as that sounds. And didn't get to know Vince. So I like watched all these interviews, and I like felt like in a weird way I grieved the loss of Vince Flynn like a year after he died, because I was now such a fan, and it was like, this sucks. Like, I'm this huge fan, I could never meet him now, And so I have been blessed, thanks to David Brown and Kyle Mills and the Flynn family, to have like this front row seat to everything after. And I'm so thankful for that. But what I found was I was very passionate talking about Mitch Rapp. There were other people passionate about other characters and authors. And then there were people that really hadn't discovered a love for these characters or these books. And I started writing book reviews for like other outlets. And I started realizing like this could be a career thing because there's no one covering our genre. And so when I launched the Book Spy, it was like, I felt like the thriller genre was the NFL league, right? And the authors were like the teams, and the characters were like the players.
Yeah.
And my goal was to cover every level of that. So I wanted to be different. Interviews, announce books, announce book deals, review the books, connect people with books. And I launched that in 2014. It didn't really catch on until 2015. By 2018, that year alone, that calendar year, we did 2 million unique impressions. And that's when I knew, oh, this is a thing. And I'm probably going to work in thrillers for the foreseeable future.
Nice.
And none of that, by the way. And then I decided, so I started working as an editor. I decided I was going to write a book. And it like, so looking back, this is like a very like half the show answer on your question. I look back on it now and I'm like, dude, I never would have thought back then this would lead to me being a book spy, being an author, having a son named Mitch,
Right.
all this stuff. And so I look back on it and it is a wild, crazy ride that I feel very privileged to be on.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. I feel like one of the best parts that's come out of doing this podcast, you mentioned it too, is just connecting with other people, because oftentimes you can just, unless it's like a huge series, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, whatever, you can find that not many people, unless you're like part of a book club, that you have a community. And then so once you either you find like websites like your own, or you do this podcast and you engage with fans, you actually see, oh, there's other people out there that are like me, way more into it than me. And I like what you said, how there's other people have takes that like you were like, how can you have that take? Like Mitch is the best character, like Mitch.
They're wrong.
Mitch
that's just like, that's how I rationalize. They're just wrong. They just don't know. They're
yeah,
wrong.
but it's just, I don't know. It's a great community. And I think it's crazy that it's changed your life, obviously for it seems the better. And
so completely, right? Like it turns out this could have went really bad. Like they could have been like, this guy is nuts. Like he is obsessed over a not real person. Like, no, it totally went the other way. I understand that some people don't like Mitch Rapp the most. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. They're wrong. They're entitled to that opinion. They're wrong. And you talk about like so completely changing a life and even the life of my family. Like it's just, it's really wild to look back on.
Would you say that like Mitch is almost part of your family?
Yeah, I mean, so my son Mitchell, which by the way, I named him Mitchell Ryan because I was determined to put a Mitch and a Ryan together. I mean, I felt like, Kyle could have wrote a Ryan character in there that was Mitch Rapp's secret best friend forever, and that'd have been great. But since he didn't do it, I was determined to put a Mitch and a Ryan together. So I have a Mitchell Ryan, and he calls himself the Mitch Rapp baby. He's 5 now, and he literally refers to himself. So we play Minecraft, and his name is Mitch Rapp baby.
That's awesome.
When he plays Roblox, it's Mitch Rapp baby.
Mission accomplished.
Right. My kids have heard me read. So I do what I call the daddy abridged version. and I've read all the Mitch Rapp books out loud to them. I like it's like highly edited and very abridged, but they all know the gist of them. And they're all fans. And when the movie came out, I like spent hundreds of dollars to buy this thing called a Clear Play device so my kids could watch the movie because it takes out like the swearing and the nudity and stuff like that. I left the violence in because it's not real, so I didn't freak out. My wife was like, because I was like, it's not, can they watch that part? Like, they know Mitch Rapp kills people. And so my wife like consented and was like, fine, like just take out all the other stuff. So they're fans of the movie, man. Like they genuinely are fans of Mitch Rapp.
That's awesome. Get them young. We got to get the next generation if those are fans.
Hey, Chris, when are we watching American Assassin with Patrick and Mary? I'm coming over for a Mitch Rapp viewing with the kids.
No, I'd have to get one of those devices that Ryan got for sure.
You do need one. You do need one. Worth it though. So worth it. That was a fun. So like I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but I will because. I mean, what are they gonna do now? But so that really cool like DVD special features where David Brown is interviewed.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was invited onto the set, and there's been two really important things in my life, Vince Flynn related, that I couldn't partake in because of my oldest son's health issues. So the first one was the Vince Flynn legacy event. Like they invited me out, and I was planning to go. My son had some really extreme medical conditions where he like truly collapsed one time and had to go by ambulance to the hospital, and we found out how bad it was. And so they kicked us up to U of M and they scheduled him for tests the same, it was like the day before, the day, I can't remember now because it was so long ago, but I couldn't go to Minnesota for that event. So I was so bummed, but at the time the whole Flynn family was like very sweet to me, and they were like, I was like, I'm so sorry I can't be there. Like I want to be. And they're like, Vince would have been with his kid, so you're doing the right thing. Right. And that made me feel good. And then after that, I never second guessed it. You know, the trip to London to go on the set, that one hurt. So again, my son was really going through a tough medical stretch, and just couldn't justify leaving because we also have I also have a son who's autistic. That's a lot to leave on my wife. You know, at that point we had 5 kids. That was like a lot to like. I'm going off to meet Michael Keaton and Dylan Bryan, babe. Like, you're going to have to hold this down. That was a lot, you know? And so I couldn't go. And so it broke my heart both times. But again, the Flynn family, David Brown, everyone was like, hey, you're doing the right thing. But it really sucked for me. So when I watched that back, I'm like, that could have been me. Like, that could have been me behind David. And I did all the prep work. I found out that Michael Keaton is a germaphobe, and I was going to bet David Brown, like, tell him that I read online that he likes to be just spontaneously hugged at random. So run up there. And I was so ready for that, and I didn't get to do it. So I was so bummed.
Oh, that's good. So those are 2 bummer moments, but you have some great ones.
Yeah. So I think we're going to end up doing like multiple parts to this, which I hope we do, because I would love to do a show and tell with you guys.
Let's have you back.
I feel like I have the Vince Flynn Museum over here. I should have pulled it out for this one. So what I have is...
We've been petitioning to get a real museum, by the way, installed at his alma mater.
That's a running gag on our pod, actually.
Yeah. Well, we could make it happen. So my youngest... So when we got pregnant for the last time, and I say the last time because we're just so done. But if number 5 was a boy, I had lobbied hard for Mitch, and my wife said no. So I talked her into naming my daughter Riley Anna, after Anna Riley.
Yeah.
She didn't really know that at the time. That kind of came out later. She's like, did we name our kid after? I was like, yeah, we did. Like, yeah, you didn't know, but we made it happen.
Surprise.
With my youngest, with Mitch, I told Melissa, that's my wife, I was like, if it's a boy, it's got to be Mitch. And she's like, I'll think about it. So I can't remember who I was talking to in the Flynn family, but when they found out, they're like, hey, Ryan, if it's a boy, you know you got to name him Mitchell. And I was like, babe, Vince's family said we have to. Like, we can't say no.
Guilt card.
I don't know how that worked, but she was like, okay, fine. If it's a boy, it can be Mitch. If it's a girl, I get to name the baby. So I was all in on making this happen. You know what I mean? And so thank God it was a boy. I got a Mitchell, and I got a gift from one of Vince's brothers in the mail, and it was the original MacBook Pro that Vince wrote his first 4 books on.
Oh, wow.
And that's like the holy grail for me. So
that's cool. That's really cool.
Really awesome.
That's going in the museum. I think the museum gag started when David Brown showed us the statue in his office. I'm sure you've seen it.
Oh yeah.
But Mitch Rapp coming out of the duct from Transfer Power. That's
Yeah.
Some fans, man, over the top. And then, like you said with your website, the kill catalog, we relied on that for data early in the pod. You even had a post how many times he drinks coffee. We want to find the people who like these eccentric, esoteric deep dives into the text, because I think what Vince Flynn created sets itself apart from so much else in the Thrillerverse that it deserves that level of attention.
Yeah. Well, he checks every box. You've created the most badass character ever created. You beat headlines. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this part. You know, like with Memorial Day, when they took a nuke down the Potomac, the Pentagon like flagged that and was like, you need to hold that book back because, you know, he's like, surely you had a plan for that. And it was like, no, we didn't. So they like wanted like,
whoa,
there was stuff in there that like literally, you know what I mean? There was the meeting President Bush and you're a little too accurate. Like all these things, this guy beat headlines. And when you look at the Osama bin Laden raid, Vince had a sequence that's almost identical to that.
Right.
You know, and so you got this great character, you beat the headlines, and then him as a person. I mean, he's a good-looking guy. He's charismatic. He's so smart, but he's a guy's guy, you know? Like, the guy likes sports, and it's someone you want to hang out with. You know what I mean? All the stories, everyone loved him, and he was genuine. And hits number one on the New York Times list and doesn't change him. You know how rare that is? And he had a great family who kept him grounded, don't get me wrong, but you know, Vince was the man. And you look at the books and it's like, I totally agree with you. They're worthy of being poured over and looked into and doing a deep dive because he really put everything into them.
Yeah, there's just a certain quality, and not to like put down other things we've read that we've really enjoyed, but there's just something about reading a Vince Flynn novel. I don't know. When we doing the deep dive during, starting this during COVID and, hashing out these books, because both me and Mike had obviously read them multiple times before, and then going back and actually like discussing these things for the first time, it brought a whole new appreciation to how well crafted this series has been. And I think, like, I don't know, we were going to ask you like how you kind of mentioned it too, how Kyle has now taken it and obviously continued that work, but then adapted on, brought his spin to it. What have you thought of the last couple of novels? Were you a fan of the Mike, spoiler, but Mike Nash Enemy at the Gates turn? That kind of roiled the fandom a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so listen, I have a take on this. In the same way that if you tell me Mitch Rapp is not the greatest character ever created, you're wrong. So when you tell me that, like, Mike Nash would never do that, you're wrong. I'm sorry, I hear you, I get it, you love it, you're wrong.
This is true.
You're wrong. It was there from the beginning. He always was not so much if he's a brother to Mitch, he's the little brother that doesn't listen, that always is going against the big brother.
Yes.
Everyone that's like, he was a tough guy too. No, he's really not. Vince wrote a sequence, you guys know, like Mitch, one palm to the chest and like Nash is on his ass. Like, he's not going to come after Mitch Rapp. Okay. So can we just stop that whole like, but the idea that like he's the golden boy and would not, there's the groundwork is there in the books. If you look closely, this is in character with Mike Nash. This is not, the only shock was that Kyle really did it.
Right. I know that was a huge shock.
That he had the stones to do it. Like, but it's not in any way shocking to me that Nash would do it. I give Kyle credit for actually seeing it through. But I thought it was genuine to the character Vince created and made a lot of sense in the story.
Yep. I think Kyle, because every once in a while, it's not common on the Facebook threads or somewhere else in the groups, someone will inadvertently say, I stopped reading after, Vince passed and it's never been the same since, or Kyle Mills books just haven't kept up the tradition. Once again, you're entitled to your opinion, but again, it's a wrong opinion.
They're wrong. Yeah, they're wrong.
Kyle pulls on those threads.
Yeah.
For as little as Vince left him with notes, like you're saying, the 3 pages to start the Survivor, Kyle was able to find the threads, pull on them, unravel them, and weave them into his own version of storytelling that's very much within the themes and, the zeitgeist of what is in a Mitch Rapp novel. And it's just genius. He picked up on this stuff with such little cues, and everything he's doing is honoring Vince It's honoring the characters and the characters he's made on his own and the stories he's taken to update the work. You know, he's always talking about how Vince never saw the rise of ISIS in his lifetime.
Yes, yeah.
He's writing it exactly how I think Vince would have done so himself.
Yep.
I totally agree with you. And I can say I've seen firsthand what Kyle does to prep. I've had dinner with him. I've talked to him a lot. And I am in no way, I take zero credit for anything. You know, he said to me, like, here's my notes. What do you think? That kind of a thing. We've talked a lot about a lot of this stuff, man. But, like, I see the depth of it behind the scenes, how much he really puts into this and how much he cares, how important it is to Kyle to stay true to what Vince is doing. At the same time, the world is changing and evolving. And it's silly to think that if Vince were alive today, he'd still be writing Middle Eastern terrorism versus Mitch Rapp. Like, that's not where the world is. Vince was going to take on whatever threats were there. Now, look, one of the things that made Vince Flynn was he was capturing Middle Eastern terrorism for what it was while everyone else was still focused on Russia. Right. Clancy and some of the old guys like that. Like, Vince was really one of those young authors at the time that was hitting on the next threat. So it's stupid to think that Vince wouldn't have been looking for the next threat for Mitch Rapp. Whether that was inside the U.S. or whether that was outside, it's logical that he would have been doing that too. Kyle's doing the same thing, and he's doing it at a very high level.
Yeah. Also, would you say Mitch was always different than the other thriller characters or superheroes in these books because he was a human?
Yeah.
He was a family man. He almost had those qualities that Vince had. And just look at that scene where he finds out that Anna's pregnant. I think he's brought to tears in this restaurant. A lot of these tough guys, I don't think authors would be willing to write the human side of them as strongly as Vince would do. And maybe it's part of his Catholic background of knowing that, you know, what true manhood is and whatnot. He's willing to go into those vulnerable areas. And so Mitch is pretty vulnerable. And now we see Kyle putting Mitch as a father figure with baby Anna. And I think it's just brilliant seeing that. And some people have said, Mitch is being domesticated and he's not killing enough. I think that's the furthest thing from the truth because it's a new stage of his life. Vince would have written him becoming a man, becoming a father. And I love how in Oath of Loyalty, we got to hear your take on Oath of Loyalty. Anna even says to him, Mitch, you've been such a great father to Anna. That brought me to tears because it's just, it's a whole new Mitch, even though it's the same Mitch.
It's what he always wanted.
Right. Yes.
Anyone that's like this, you know, I hate this take on Mitch Rapp. This is what Mitch Rapp always wanted. Things got dark later in the series. And I look back at that as, you know, Vince was dealing with cancer. And let's just take a second, by the way, to acknowledge the fact that this guy is diagnosed with cancer and still wrote 2 books.
2 very good books.
Very good books.
I'm telling you right now, like, as an author, which is still weird for me to say because I have 1 book out and I finished my second one and turned it in. I promise you, if they diagnose me with cancer, I am not writing a book. Like, I am focused on that. You know what I mean? This guy gave us Mitch Rapp and put Mitch Rapp and his fans first. And so I like to look at it under that lens. Who is Mitch Rapp? And he had gotten pretty dark for a while there post Consent to Kill.
Right.
I think very wisely, Kyle knew he had to give him his soul back, but that can't just happen. There's got to be a plan for that. Well, all Kyle did is look at what does Mitch want? What did Vince want to give him? And FYI, there's plenty of interviews where Vince says, you know, one day I want to explore Mitch Rapp as a father. So people that think this never would have happened, again, you're entitled to your wrong opinion, but it's incorrect. It's not right. That Vince did plan on that. Kyle just followed the blueprint that was there. Now, as for Mitch himself, I couldn't be happier for the guy. I had described Mitch Rapp as like a best friend of mine that I could never meet in person.
Right.
But every time that book comes out, it's like my best friend's back in town for a weekend.
Yes.
And I get to spend it with them. And man, I am hyped. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I am hyped. And so it's great for me to see Mitch with his soul back, allowed to be happy, but still doing his job. You know, the biggest complaint that I see about Mitch Rapp, this is so stupid, is they're like, oh, he's too Superman-like. I don't agree. The guy's got a big scar on his face, okay? That's a reminder right there he bleeds, okay? Secondly, they say that because Mitch Rapp's never been bested. That's only mostly true, just so you know. yes, Mitch Rapp is like won every fight he's been in, but it's always, you ever notice it's written in a way that's actually believable?
Yeah, no, it is.
There's other, I won't name them, but I cover them, and they're supposed to be the alpha males.
Yep.
They get bested.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, I'll read these, and this is no offense to any other authors, because I'm big fans of these guys. But I'll read them, I'm like, Mitch Rapp would have smoked that dude, just so you know. Like, I feel that way when I read him. I'm like, this guy got his ass kicked, and Mitch would have definitely smoked this guy. But anyways, it's done in a way that's not comical or over the top. It's actually believable. Like, we believe Mitch is really this good at what he does, which is why it's believable he's doing it into his 40s, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, because the table was set for that. So I think Kyle has really delivered so well onto that. I enjoy seeing Mitch at this next phase, and it makes sense, man. The world's changing. The country's changing. Mitch Rapp is going to change a little bit, which is why I thought, I mean, that's my take on Oath of Loyalty. I thought it was so brilliant because the world is changing. The country is changing. The country that Mitch Rapp has spent his whole life protecting has now turned on him, and that is brilliant.
Right.
Yep. And it's not just Mitch, it's Irene caught in that crossfire too.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, some of that stuff is closer to the reality than we'd like in today's world.
Right.
And I mean, not to be political, and I don't go there ever publicly with, you know, any of my platforms, but like, if just read the news, okay? Like, it's realistic, and I think to capture that and show it through Mitch's eyes and point of view is a unique take on this, you know? And I think Kyle did it all very well. Look, that to have the stones to do what he did with Mike Nash, to have Mitch betrayed by the country he has spent his whole adult life protecting. This guy has bled to keep the flag red numerous times. To now be on the other side of that, and Irene's on the other side of that, and everything that they've known, it's all kind of in shambles, and they don't really know what's going to happen next. To me, that is as bold and daring as killing off Anna Riley.
Right.
And Consent to Kill. And that's why I think Oath of Loyalty is, and I really mean this, I think it's the best Mitch Rapp book since Consent to Kill.
Yeah, Mike said the same thing. That's funny. Yeah.
I did. I said Kyle's best, and I said by far, I said I think it's Kyle's Consent to Kill. I will say that. I also think it's his absolute best dialogue and character writing he's ever written, even reading most of his other books. I just think he was at the top of his game. The words that he put in the characters' mouths, the stories and situations he built, and where he moved America to. The book was both personal and grand. Yeah. It had this like microcosm and macrocosm of everything in the Mitch Rapp universe that we love. And the Cooks, I think, were a big part of that. I think they might be on the level of some of Vince's early villains. Like, I think the Cooks are up there with what's his name?
Hank Clark.
I'll tell you what. We talked about Mitch Rapp being stone cold. Here's how stone cold Vince Flynn was. You have Stu Garrett introducing your very first book ever in Term Limits. This dude waited a decade to smoke him.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
Yep.
Think about that.
What a rat that guy was.
We end Act of Treason with Irene smoking her first guy right in the Oval, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, brilliant. And then you know Mitch Rapp's going to kill Stu Garrett, but he's told you have to wait a year. This is so brilliant because the publishing schedule is one book a year.
Right.
And so here comes Protect and Defend, and I was like, oh, I hope Mitch kills this guy, you know? So literally a year later, in real time, Mitch Rapp is swimming out to that yacht, you know? Vince waited a decade to kill this guy. And what he was so brilliant at, yes, he created the hero we all love. What he also did is he created all the villains we hate.
Yeah.
I hate all these people. Like, every time I meet these guys.
Who's your favorite villain?
Oh, it's tough for me. I think Stu Garrett would be like way up there because he's everything we hate about politics and all of that in general. For me, and I'll be so this is okay. I'm going to tell you who I'm going to talk about something I've never really talked about publicly.
Okay.
But it's Louis Gould. I hate him. I absolutely hate him. It took me like a whole book to accept that Mitch would be with his wife. At first, I was like, what are we doing? Like, no way. Like, I just had such a hard time. Like, Kyle could tell you if he remembers the behind-the-scenes stuff. We went to dinner one time, and I pitched him, and he was kind of talking to me about it, and I was like, no. Like, why don't you bring back Greta? See, I liked her. Like,
yeah, where the hell is Greta?
What happened to Greta?
Bring Greta, she was smoking hot. She loved Mitch. She was like bandaging up his wounds. Like,
She's an Olmeyer.
To show you how my brain works very differently than like Kyle's. We're talking about this over dinner, and I'm like, I bring Greta back. Like, we're talking about it. And he's like, no, because something would have had to happen that was so bad she's never ever mentioned again. No, Vince went back and wrote those books after he wrote the whole middle of the series. Like, he couldn't have mentioned her. She wasn't created yet.
Right.
I think she's in hiding, and it's the perfect time to bring her back, So it took me literally like a whole book to like kind of accept that Mitch Rapp was with Louis Gould's widow. I at the time I was like, I don't love it, and now it makes all the sense in the world. Now I get it, which I'll never doubt. Kyle and Kyle we trust for that reason alone. He made it really work, Yeah,
he made it work. It could have went off the rails though.
It could have went bad. Like it could have went big bad. But instead, there's something kind of beautiful about. Well, look, I have 3 adopted children, so I'm a big believer in blood doesn't make you family, that makes you relatives, and that concept. So I kind of really like, for me, it's like nice seeing Mitch raise a kid that's not biologically his. I know what that's like. But there's also something kind of beautiful about raising the kid that was named after your late wife.
Yes.
And he really made that work.
That's where I was sold. And I do understand people who initially hesitated and still do. Some people still don't even like that Claudia's around. But, and I've said this on our pod, and Chris, you've heard me a million times, the consent to kill epilogue, to me, is my favorite single piece of text, favorite chapter Vince ever wrote. It is so important to who Mitch is, and it's the small things, the way he almost questions himself on pointing a gun at this mother and child. It's almost like a Mary and Madonna kind of scene.
Yep.
And the way he asks himself, who am I, while he's waving a gun at a mother and child, to me is like, Vince knew there was something there that's going to change Mitch, and that door was open. And then the other thing Kyle did when Mitch first goes to check on Claudia, I think it might have been South Africa even, and he sees baby Anna there, and there's this scene where he sees them again after the epilogue and consent to kill was the last time he saw them. And the way Kyle wrote that, it worked for me. It really worked right from the jump. And I know for others it didn't, but I put those 2 scenes together in my mind that it changed Mitch. And once a scene like that changes Mitch, it's unfinished business. It's going to have to come back.
I agree. And he made it work. And I mean, referencing Order to Kill, to me, that was Kyle's best book before this one, Oath of Loyalty. I loved Order to Kill because the first time we see Mitch Rapp, dude, I'm not like, everyone's like, well, Louis Gould was a great, like, I hate him so bad I don't even consider him in Mitch Rapp's league. Like, no thanks. He got killed by 80-year-old Stan Hurley, so I don't think so. To think,
great scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene, but I'm not all about hyping up Louis Gould. I love Grisha, and I think to see Mitch Rapp finally have an adversary who could hold their own against him,
right, was
great. Yep. And you can't sell that if he doesn't hurt Scott Coleman. That was the book I was sweating at, by the way. I'm like, dude, if Scott Coleman dies, I'm about to really cry here. Like, this is going to be a grown man ugly cry session. You can't take Scott Coleman. Like, no. Mitch has lost his wife, his baby, his one of his mentors, both really, in Stansfield and Hurley. Like, he's going to literally be down to only, like, his brother that we never see. Hardly ever. Irene Kennedy and Tommy. He's not going to have no one after this. Like, I was feeling it. So I was like, he needs to make a full recovery. But you can't sell that if you don't do that. And you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You show that Grisha's a badass, and Mitch doesn't have his right-hand man. So it truly is 1v1 now. And that was my favorite. That was my favorite Kyle Mills book before Oath of Loyalty.
I think that's still Kyle's best scene, and definitely best action scene, is the Grisha versus Scott fight.
Yep. I agree. It's not even the Grisha versus Mitch.
Rapp, right? That one was almost, that I remember actually, Chris, both you and I agreed on the podcast. The first half of that book, some of our favorite in the whole series. The second half just didn't raise to that level. So we liked that book, but the first half was definitely.
Yeah, there was a part of me that wanted to see Mitch curb stomp Grisha. And
I was happy to see him come back because I was kind of like wondering what he was doing, and I liked how, especially in this last book, Kyle was like pulling on all these like callbacks, and out of nowhere we get a call from Grisha, and as well as like we get a reference to transfer of power, right? Where he gets put in. He's like, "Oh, I saved the president, not too far from this bunker where I'm about to be shackled." So speaking of non-Rapp characters, who would you say is your favorite non-Rapp character?
It's tough, but Irene for sure for me.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, she's the OG character. I mean, she is so important in transfer of power. I mean, she recruited the hero, but I love her loyalty to Mitch. That's really what it is. And Coleman has it too, don't get me wrong. But I love the way that Kennedy is very much like a big sister who has his back and trusts him so completely. If you actually go back and look, by the way, Coleman questions Mitch more than Irene does. Scott, a lot of times, will be like, "Are you sure?" More than Irene, who usually knows if Mitch is weighing in, it's gospel. Like, that's what it is. And I just love that. I love that about her and their trust together. And I love the way they interact, especially after, big moments. One of my favorite scenes with them is when Mitch finds out that Anna died. His scene with her. I love where they're at the safe house and they're trying to have this nice moment, and this whole hit team rolls up like they're going to do something, and Mitch kills every single one of them because he's still Mitch, and we see how pissed he is. But I just really love the dynamics of their relationship. Also, how smart she is. She learned from the best in Thomas Stansfield, a spy's spy, and we see her embody that. She's also not afraid to get her hands dirty. We've seen her do that.
Yes.
I love that scene in Act of Treason when she literally kills someone right in the Oval Office. I think that's one of the best scenes in the series, because you're like, oh dang, and I love wild. Mitch's reaction to it, by the way.
Yeah, pretty wild. Yeah.
Oh, who did it?
He's also like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm fine."
Yep.
And she's like, all professional, moving on.
Yep.
That was great.
So Michael O'Rourke was one I really liked. I actually wish he would come back. I wish we could find a role for him.
I wish we could vote for him in Congress. Right
I'm with you. Yes. There's a couple. I mean, I like both former presidents. I actually wish we knew more what's going on with them post.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, being in office. There's actually another author that I cover that I like. His name's Steve Barry. And his Cotton Malone series, there's like this fan favorite president, Danny Daniels. And when he gets out of office, he runs for Congress. A way to stay involved. Like, he can't be president again. So he's like, I'm not just going to leave. Like, screw these bastards. I'm not done yet. And there's a part of me that almost wishes we knew more about what was going on with the former presidents, especially Alexander, because I was really fond of him. He had me at the whole, I played football, sometimes it's better to be on offense. Like, come on, take the leash off Mitch Rapp and let him eat. Like, that's what we want to see anyways. Like, I was in. I love this guy.
Tide.
But at the same time, he had a different president give him a consent to kill everyone involved. So I'm a big fan of both of them. Dark Horse, we've already talked about. I really liked Greta. I wish we knew what happened. I wish we knew where she was.
We need that third book, like the third.
Yeah, we really
do. Post Killshot book,
Yeah, we need what falls between Killshot and term limits for sure. I wish they would let Kyle write that book, but Hurley is a favorite.
Oh yeah,
how can he not be? I love that he got to go out in a lot of ways protecting Mitch Rapp, because to me that scene, like, it's crazy to think he's like biting a dude's throat out, but to me it's actually kind of like beautiful in the sense that I'm done. Like, I'm checking out now, but don't worry, your biggest threat I'm taking with me. And he does. He removes the biggest person who's a threat to Mitch and Louis Gould, that slime ball, and literally eats his throat out. And I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that we gave him one more high priority target to take out. I love that scene.
And The Last Man is almost, that's the whole arc, right? It's Vince's last book. he probably senses in the back of his mind that this is going to be it. And he almost writes this swan song.
Yep.
And it mirrors Hurley. Hurley mirrors him. There's, I think, one of the more haunting scenes that sticks with me is, I think they're out on a patio, and I think it's Nash and Irene inside the kitchen looking through the glass door.
Yep.
Out at Stan and Mitch in the chairs, and it's just like it's
a great
so
scene.
Meaningful. It's so deep, and just know it's Vince's last book. And that Kyle was willing to put that in the Survivor and pick up on that. It made the transition almost magical, mysterious.
Well, listen,
it has this haunting aura.
I totally agree. As an author myself now, do you know the kind of anxiety it would give me if someone was like, hey, we need you to take over this #1 New York Times bestselling series right now? And you're like, oh, okay. I can write whatever I want? No, it needs to be a direct sequel to the last book the author wrote. Okay, is the antagonist alive? No, they're dead. Like, you're like, I got a lot to work with.
And a hardcore
here.
fan base.
Like, that.
A demanding fan base.
Oh my gosh. Like, that would be, I would lose my mind, man. I would be so scared. And instead, Kyle found a way to make all that work. And I felt like wrapped up the Vince Flynn part of these books, this series, brought it to a really satisfying conclusion in a way that was so well done that it kind of closed that door and opened a new one for us to come back with Order to Kill and Beyond. And I think that's why it works so well.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So you mentioned, I guess we want to, we don't have too much time. You said you got to go, but you mentioned a couple times, and you're now an author, Fields of Fire. Well, both Mike and I had a chance to read it. I think it's very good. Excited for the next one.
Oh, thank you, man.
You had Pub Day August 2nd, so it's been a couple months. What has it been like to be a published author now?
Terrifying, because I signed that contract. It was a 2-book deal, and it dawned on me, like, after about a month, like, they're going to want me to write this second book. I'm probably going to need to go do that. The paper shortage actually pushed back my pub date till September 6th, and it was like, in a weird way, a full circle moment for me, because I came out 1 week before Mitch Rapp. It's been really surreal. I'm still at the point, like, where, like, my kids' friends, like, hey, what do you do for a living, Mr. Steck? And I'm like, first of all, I hate being called that. But, like, oh, I'm an editor, I'm a book spy. And my oldest kids are like, Dad, just call yourself an author. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, by the way, tell your parents to buy my books, And I'm like, it's been amazing. It's something I've always wanted to do, didn't have the confidence to do or the time to do for a long time, and finally committed to it. A lot of people ask me if my character, Matthew Red, if the initials are based off of Mitch Rapp. No, they're not. I created him in high school for a creative writing assignment that got me suspended from school for a whole week because it was so violent. And I actually said to my agent, I was like, should I change the name? And he was like, why? And I'm like, because Matthew Red, Mitch Rapp. And he's like, I never even would have thought of that. Like, if you wouldn't have said it, I'm like, people are going to think of it. And the problem is, the character was so real to me. He'd been with me for like 20 years. I couldn't rename him. It was like really tough. So a lot of people think that that's actually not true. There's a few moments for sure where you can see, I hope you could see where my love of Vince Flynn plays a role in me as an author. He's mentioned prominently in the acknowledgments of Fields of Fire, and that book, it's not a Vince Flynn-like book, but I said to my agent when I was going to write it, I said, my two favorite authors in the world are Vince Flynn and C.J. Box, and they couldn't be more different. Like, if you know anything about...
That comes through.
Yeah, if you see anything more about C.J. Box, I mean, he's not Vince Flynn. Joe Pickett is not... His character, Joe Pickett, is not Mitch Rapp. He's the opposite.
Right.
And I said to my agent, I'm going to write Vince Flynn meets C.J. Box. And I remember there was like this long sigh, and he went, what the hell does that look like? And I was like, give me a year. Let's find out. I don't know yet. I'm going to go find out. And there were people surprised, I think, when they read my book, and they were like, I thought it was going to be just like Vince Flynn. I'm not smart enough to write those books, man. I'm really not. I don't know how Vince did that. There can only be one Vince Flynn. You know how lucky we are we got a Kyle Mills?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I would hate to be the person that has to step in after that, okay? Because you're just not going to keep catching lightning in a bottle that many times. We are so blessed as a fan base to have Kyle following Vince. It's unreal. And so let me just tell you, like, it's a lot harder than people think to write a book, okay? And even to get published. And so the fact that we get just A-plus storytellers from Vince and to Kyle. I don't think you're getting that a third time. So I have a whole new appreciation, but I wanted to stay true. You know, I like to say Vince Flynn made me fall in love with thrillers. CJ Box made me want to be an author. Because those were stories I felt like I could tell. And I don't mean that in a like, he's less smart than Vince Flynn kind of way. It's like these localized to a certain area out west stories really appeal to me. I can't pull off the kind of stuff that Vince does. I don't think I could, honestly. I'm so glad Kyle can. So for me, it was like, what are the stories I could tell? You know what? We don't see a Mitch Rapp character out west. We don't see that. We never get that. And to me, that was so obvious because it's like, man, out west, you really are alone. Like, backup is not minutes away. It is hours at best or days at worst. Yeah. Like, the stakes are heightened. And I thought, okay, I want to set a Mitch Rapp-ish like character out west, and that's really how my series was born. So my series is about a former Marine Raider who gets out of the military and goes back home for the first time in over a decade to his little town in Montana to find his adopted father murdered. And as he investigates and looks into that, he uncovers a global conspiracy that only he can stop. So there's those big, you know, Mitch Rapp type action scenes, but set in a CJ Box-like universe, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you both, by the way, for reading it, guys. I really appreciate that.
Yes,
Book 2, I'm so much higher on. It's called Lethal Range. It comes out August 15th, 2023. Available for pre-order wherever books are sold in all formats. And I'm told I have to say that, just so you know. But
hey, make the plug. Plug away. Plug away.
So the second one, I went for it. Like the first one, you have to establish things. There is some action in there. But the second one really opens with action and does not stop till the end. Like every time you think, oh, this is probably the big action sequence, it's not. The next one's bigger. And then the next one's bigger. And the next one's bigger. And I remember when I turned into my publisher, they actually like called and said, hey, dude, are you aware that it's like pretty much all action? And I was like, yes. Yes, I knew that. That was by design, so that worked out okay. And they're like, okay, just want to make sure. Did you want to add in a few like slower moments? And I was like, no, I like where this one's at. So the few people who have read it, my agent and a couple people very close to me, felt like it was much better than Fields of Fire. So I can't wait for August 15th. It's special for me because, we talk about like Coleman being this best friend to Mitch Rapp, and Irene Kennedy has his back. So my real life best friend, his name is Mikey Durhammer, and he bought the house across from mine. And we have dogs, big Rottweilers who are brothers, and we eat dinner every night. We're like family. And I was actually writing book 2 and realized that Red needed a sidekick and someone he could trust. So I just wrote my best friend into the book and didn't tell my publisher he's based on a real person. So when I turned it in, they were like, we love this like new character. Like you did your homework. Like he really feels real and fleshed out. And I was like, thank you. Like I knew I should have told them he was based off of my best friend, but I was like, I'll let them think I'm really good at this for a minute. And then, and then later I fessed up. So it's fun for me. For all those reasons, I think you see more Mitch Rapp-like stuff in this book. Certainly, what I love about Vince's action is in Lethal Range. And I'm really pumped up about that. So I'm excited, man. And
yeah, I think where you left us, Matty Red he's ready to rip. He is ready to rip in book 2, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, he is. He's a big boy. He's 6'3.5" and 265 pounds of muscle. I just did an interview the other day where they were like, "Are you Matty Red, Ryan?" And I was like, "No." Like, if you could see, this was interview. Okay, I should have just said yes. I was like, "No." If you could see me right now, believe me, my wife wishes I looked more like Matty Red. Negative. Okay, but he talks the way I'm pretty sure I would if I was 6'3.5", 265 pounds of muscle, could get away with it. Okay, right. So in that sense, maybe, but no, I hope you guys like it. I hope my true belief is if you like Mitch Rapp, you'll see enough in my character that maybe you give him a try and you like it. But listen, without Vince Flynn, I'm not even coming on this podcast as a Rappologist, as a book spy, or as an author.
Right. Well, how about this? We want to go much deeper into Fields of Fire. We want to hear more about Lethal Range. And trust me, we've got tons more we could talk about with Mitch Rapp. So How about we have you back on sometime soon?
Yeah.
And then down the road, we have you back on to talk Lethal Range closer to that pub date in 2023.
Yeah. I feel like we barely scratched the surface, guys. Like, there's so much more to talk about. We're going to have to do another part 2, part 3, part 4 on this.
Because we could I didn't even get to ask you, you put it on the, I guess, we could just tell them to go read your blog post, but I want to hear from your mouth explaining the top 10 kills, like that you put out there. So
yeah,
there's
so
a lot.
much more. We got to do it again. And I love what you guys are doing, by the way. So on behalf of all the other Mitch Rapp fans, thank you. We needed someone to do a podcast like this and deep dive it, man. I love what you guys are doing. Please keep it up, and let's do this again soon.
Definitely.
That's awesome. Well, one last thing. Thank you for that praise. And before we let you go, we're going to keep a No Limits tradition alive, which is to send you off with your very own limerick. He calls himself Ryan, the Rappologist, the real book spy right here in our midst. A true Vince Flynn scholar who can write quite the brawler. Fields of Fire, a Matty Red novel not to be missed. Thanks for joining us, Ryan Steck. Can't wait to have you back.
Thank you, guys.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. Next week, you got to go over to our other feeds. This feed will be going a little bit dormant, but go to season 2, Scott Harvath Pod. You get our part 2 of Takedown, and go check out the No Limits Thriller podcast, where we will be bringing you maybe Savage Son, definitely our interview with Andrews and Wilson, and a whole lot more to come. So, as always, we need to thank our patrons, our special operator Sherry Up, our special agents Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us online at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at thrillerpodcast. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch.